Just got a text message. Daryl Marble is watching. He wanted to send love across the plane, he said. Hello, everybody. So, what's up, Big D? Yeah, we've got a lot to go yet. And obviously, this next guy that's coming up, last year when we all got together for the first time, it's really cool when you get to meet somebody. I was just like, you guys, same way. Every time you meet somebody, it's like, wow, there they are. This is really cool. This is awesome. But there's something about this group. And Jeran, Campanella, who's coming up next, is a guy that I listened to not long after I came into Flat Earth, and I was looking at his laser test, like what Rob was saying, and this and that. And he just had a really cool style of just kind of breaking things down. I kind of listened to how he did it, and I could understand his reasoning. So it is a pleasure for me to be able to welcome him to the stage. It's also a pleasure for me to say I look forward to more and more work that he and Bob do on Globebusters together, but even as an individual. And just please give a very warm welcome to Jeran Campanella.
Let's see if this thing works here.
Guidance is internal.
Ignition sequence start.
3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake. 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 Because it looks so fake.
Is that not the comment of the decade right there by Elon Musk? Yeah. So what's going on, everyone? For those who don't know me, I'm Jeran Campanella. That's basically a nobody. But I've got a channel on YouTube called Jeranism. So if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I started in 2015. I blame Mark Sargent like everybody else. And the channel's name is Jeranism, like meism. And if going back and looking at that now, I definitely wish I wouldn't have gone with that name because it ended up being basically the opposite of what I wanted. But in the 3 years that have passed since I started, if there's one thing that I've come to the conclusion of, it's not safe to trust people who lie to you. And I think everybody knows that inside, but I'm not sure that we all actually act on that information. So my topic today is going to be, is this your reality? Whose reality is this? Are we living our own reality here, or are we spending our one chance? And I don't know about you guys, I feel like we get one shot here. And I feel like we are giving our reality away. That we have, rather than embraced it, rather than enjoyed it, we have basically agreed in our own way to allow somebody else to dictate exactly what our reality is. So after I named the channel Jeranism, which, like I said, invoked the complete opposite of what was originally intended because it sounds like a religion and a belief system in a weird way. It is, but it's my religion. It's not for anybody else. It's not for you. It's for me because I think that each person is responsible for their own belief system. And this afternoon I want to take you on a journey, if you come with me, as we ask ourselves some questions about this reality that we share together. So first I want to say a quick thank you to Robbie for inviting me. I know I said this yesterday, but a thank you to everyone here who's ever watched me, who's ever shared a video, who's ever basically done anything. If you've mentioned me to somebody, I appreciate it a ton. Thank you guys so much. It really means a lot to me. And please keep doing it because it's it's amazing when you started out with just 5, 6 people listening to you, and now that there's sometimes thousands. It's amazing that you get that opportunity to speak and have people listen. So I want to make the best of it, and so the more that I can reach, the best, because I think we can change the world, and that's not just one of those things that you just say when you feel like saying something good. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that it was impactful or that there was a chance that I could change something. So I do think that there is a chance, and with everybody's help, I think we can get there faster. And I also wanted to thank all my patrons. I know there's a couple of you here. You guys have been amazing. If people don't know, I can spend more than half my time in my life now worrying about focusing on the truth and researching and exposing liars and making videos. and that's because of my patrons. So, thank you very much to all those of you that are here. I really can't thank you enough. And if you ask them why they would support some lunatic who is a flat earth believer, I'd hope they'd say that it's because they recognize that I'm a truth seeker first. And I tell people all the time that at least half my subscribers, or at least it seems that way, are people who believe in the globe. And they always say in emails, the reason that they subscribe to me, the reason they watch my stuff is because I'm not afraid to ask questions. And that's something I don't think a lot of people see. They don't see that from others. A lot of people are just afraid to ask the questions. And I'm not. And so I think that that's what people, recognize, and that's what people want to see. Because essentially we have people that have ruined the world. That's what I see. And I hope that I can change that. And so the fact that you patrons out there, thank you so much, because I'm forever grateful that I have a chance now because of you to actually try and end that reign of terror, as you might call it, from these government people. So I, like you, am human and fallible, and so we all are. But what's different about me is that I ask questions that most people won't. And I've learned to, take the abuse that comes with it. There's a lot. And at first it was rough, and now I basically figured out a way to do it. It's not easy, and it takes time. And speaking of liars, though, I wanted to know if you guys saw this. You wanted to say hi, I guess.
Tellus World of Science and everybody in Edmonton, hello. This is Chris Hadfield on the International Space Station. I read you loud and clear.
Yes, you do. So, he's part of the 20-year plus deception, at least the way I see it. And again, we'll get into that throughout this speech, talking about you need to have your own beliefs. But if you care about the truth, then you need to watch those guys and see what you think. Because I don't see anything real about it. I don't see anything beneficial about it. Even if it is real, if it were real, they've done absolutely nothing for humanity, stealing $53 million a day. They're doing nothing. They're providing lies to children. And when I mean lies, I mean this whole idea of infinite space, this whole idea of you're an insignificant speck. That's not what we should be teaching children ever, because it's not true. You can just look around and see that this world is a created place. It's not accidental. You don't have a car accident and after a few times a world pops out. If you have a car accident, you get a mess. And if you have a exploding stardust, you're going to get a mess. You're not going to get what we all live on. Let's discuss for a second the value of asking questions, something nobody else does. And asking, questions arise from doubt. And in my mind, doubt is the spark or the evidence of an active intelligence. If you're not asking questions, then you're asleep. Then you're just going through the motions. And that's the opposite of what we ever want to do. Without questions, without doubt, how would our intelligence grow? How would you ever learn? How would the society, move along? I don't think we would. There's zero growth in just complacency. It's just zero. You can't grow that way. So doubt helps your intelligence by sharpening it. Questioning requires listening to answers, and this makes you aware of all the many possibilities that come with that question. And you may have never considered half of those things. And that's what I love to do. I love to talk to people because when I hear new things, it's just stuff I've never heard before, and it's up to me whether I want to bring it in and adopt it as part of my belief system or whether I want to just dismiss it. If I ask a question and get many, many answers, the chances that the correct answer is inside that group is pretty good, rather than if you don't ask any questions, then you're just going to be stuck with what you believed at the beginning. And so that should be our goal, is even if it's impossible, to get to a point where all your questions have vanished. And as crazy as that sounds, the amazing thing is that if you simply take all the answers that you get and you're happy with them, well, then you still have doubt. And this is why I don't give answers. I try not to give any answers in my video. I try not to say this is the truth and believe this and how dare you believe something different, because that's not my goal. I think that when you think about my opinions, what I've found or what I think, if I ever give you an answer, it's because, well, I'll bet you this, that it was an answer that you cannot doubt, because it simply is revealing something that is obviously true. So let me ask you guys this: if you think, do things get smaller with distance? Is that something you would say? Yeah, it's true. So those are the kind of things I try and get out. Those are the kind of things I try and say. Excuse me. Because those are the kind of things that can't be questioned. Those are things where nobody can say, no, things don't get smaller with distance. No, they do. So when you realize that all they've done is taken the idea of perspective and turned it and called it curvature, that's for you to research and discover. But the observation is there. The observation is things get smaller with distance. So if I asked you, can we see a car from 5 miles away? Hopefully people would recognize that no, you can't. That car has gotten too small over the course of 5 miles. And then when you get questions beyond that, and people might come and say, well, why can't we see it with a telescope? And then you have to bring in the ideas of how the atmosphere works. And again, those things are not questionable. We all know that you can only see a certain distance. You can only see so far. Let's see here what the next one is. So we have people like this that we think are asking good questions. Let's listen to this one.
Go to the seashore. Go to a seashore and figure out why you can't, if you live on the East Coast, figure out why you can't see Spain from the East Coast of North America.
So somebody just needs to tell him that things get smaller with distance. And you're talking about 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. It's a pretty idiotic statement. Why can't you see Spain from the East Coast of the United States? Because we know things get smaller. We know how big a building that's, say, 1,000 feet gets after 50 miles. So we can imagine how big a building that's 10,000 feet would get after 50 miles. And you can keep working from there and realize that you'll never see anything across any 3,000-mile stretch of ocean. There's nothing that big that exists. So these kind of things are, easy to talk to people about and kind of get in their mind. And with people like this running around mainstream media, mainstream science, it's going to be tough because people think that was an intelligent question, I guess. So another question for you guys is kind of talking about the things that we all know. Does it feel like we're spinning? Everybody would say no. There's simply no proof or evidence that we're spinning, and there should be. There would be. And so those are the kind of things I'm talking about where I try and push those as much as I can because I think there's enough basics that we don't need to get crazy. And it's not, we're not going to know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. Nobody does. But we're not going to get there by trying to figure them out in intricate detail with little groups of 3 people or 4 people. I think it's more about pushing the big ticket items and making the world recognize that we've been lied to, and hoping that there's people out there like you, like me, that care. My biggest fear is there's not enough people that care in the world anymore. That's the biggest fear, because if there's not, I cannot convince somebody who doesn't care. I can't convince somebody who fries again, and I can't convince somebody who likes the world that we live in. I would say, if we ask everybody here, and I don't mean likes it as in, I hate it, I'd rather die. But I mean, there's problems in the world that we should, I'm sure all of you see. That's why you're here, because there's something missing from our lives. Something isn't right. And there's people out there, I've talked to them, who feel like everything is perfect. This is the world that they expected. This is where they want to be. And you'll never convince those people. So the thing is, if you're out talking to people about it, step one is figure out, do they care? Does it matter to them if they've been lied to? And you should recognize those people because they're like us, And those are the people I think we need to do more talking to and getting to bring on board with this deception and getting them to see what we're seeing. So it doesn't also feel like we're going, 500,000 miles per hour around the Milky Way. And there's just so many things I try and point out to people, like, can we prove that George Washington existed? That's a tough one for people. And the answer is no. That there's no way you could prove that George Washington existed. And so once you start realizing that and how recently he supposedly lived, and I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm just saying if it came down to proof, you could not prove that. There is no video evidence. There is no audio evidence. There is no, you could find some signature on a document, but anybody could have wrote that. But it helps you realize that, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit, the book 1984, how many people have read it completely? So definitely if you haven't read it, you need to read the book. I know we talked about them doing things in our face. Of course, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, it's part of your high school curriculum. But it's also interesting that they give it to you at a time where nobody reads books in school. Junior, senior year, or freshman, sophomore year, whatever, most kids are just reading Cliff Notes or whatever. They're not even paying any attention. But that's the kind of thing that these elite do. They have to tell you what they're going to do. They somehow think it releases them from the burden. So it's a book that I think is interesting, and it talks a lot about doublethink, and we'll get into that, and really understanding who is setting up our reality. So my journey has become one where I'm trying to wake up more people than I turn away. As weird as that sounds. I want as many people as possible to watch videos that I make, and that's because so many people have told me that it just took one thing I said, or it took one video they saw from Mark, or it took one little. And so when I hear the media, is saying the wrong things, or that I'm somebody who doesn't care, because it's going to be that way. They've taught the world that flat Earth is dumb. They've taught the world that it's stupid. So we need to expect people to think it's dumb and to think it's stupid, to think otherwise, because everybody here, when they first heard it, thought it was dumb and stupid. So we have to be at least recognize that that's going to be the case, and then move forward based on that. So I try and get in my couple words, and when I'm interviewed or whatever, I just try and say things that gets people to check back and read the channel. I tell you guys too, if you want to hand out my videos and say, hey, this idiot believes that the Earth is flat, I don't care. Just I want to get the video in people's hands, get them watching it, and hopefully they hear something that makes them kind of wake up. So the reason that I have so many people that also hate me is because I challenge beliefs, and certainly not for the fun of it. I do it because I'm trying to shed mine. That's the real reason that I challenge beliefs, because I have beliefs just like everybody else, and I know that the goal should be to get rid of your beliefs, because beliefs are really an anti-intelligence thing. They're not helpful when you have a belief. You should be working towards giving it up, which means you're actively trying to figure out if that belief is justified, and when it's finally justified, well, it probably isn't a belief anymore. That's something because you researched it, you studied it. So beliefs kind of hurt your intelligence, essentially giving up on it and basically giving it to those who told you what to believe. So this makes you basically superstitious. It creates a judgmental person, and it makes you closed-minded, stubborn against others. That's what beliefs do. And it makes you prideful, makes you pompous. You've heard many globe believers, I'm sure, on YouTube. And these people are pompous. They're cocky. And that's because they have to protect their belief. None of us have ever been to space. None of us have ever seen the Earth from an outside perspective. None of us have never been to another planet or seen the size of the sun. So all the people who believe all those things about it, its distance, its size, they believe it, and they've adopted it as their belief system, and they're going to protect it, and they become stubborn, they become prideful, and it gives you this air of intellectualism, where you feel like you're above others because you know more than them. It creates the Richard Dawkins, it creates the Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Brian Cox, and so many more. Those people are simply religious zealots, that they have gotten to the point where their beliefs have clouded their view of the world, at least the way I see it. And these people, they can't be wrong, because they have been told that their beliefs are facts, even though science has never been right, and it's always been wrong, and that why we have the things that we have and these crazy gadgets and all these things is because people got tired of one thing and learned something else. They expanded their mind. People used to walk around, they got tired of walking, and somebody said, let's invent the wheel. Then they had a wheel and cart, and people were pulling it and getting tired with that, and they said, let's teach the horse. So then they teach the horse to pull the cart, and then they get, we want to go faster, and then it became a car, and then it became a plane. Well, these are all things because nobody ever settled, which is what I feel like we've gotten to this point where science has said, we're done, we're settling, these things are known facts, they don't allow questions anymore, they don't allow inquiry, and those things are how you grow. Asking questions is how we learn. If we teach children that cars run on gasoline, then forever cars will run on gasoline, rather than teach them or allow them to let their minds wander, use their imagination. How else can we have cars run? What else can we use? Can we use water? Can we use ocean water? We don't even allow those things. We don't even challenge children to come up with anything new. And why would they? I mean, I wasn't excited in school. I don't know about any of you. I don't remember anything compelling about it at all. But it was mostly because they sat me there in a desk and told me all the answers. And for an inquiring mind, it fulfills, I guess, that some innate feeling that you need the truth, but at the same time, it's not allowing you to find it on your own. So I think that that's the worst way that we can teach, and schools should be changed, immediately. Then they had, and they wanted to, so we all have beliefs, though. I mean, I certainly am not trying to say that I don't have beliefs, but like I said, we should be working towards getting those beliefs off of our back or off of our repertoire, and not the cheap beliefs that we were raised with. And I call those cheap beliefs because they're cheap. If you're given something to believe from your parents, that's cheap. If you're given something from school, that's cheap. It's easy. Here's what the truth is. Okay, I believe that. You didn't do any work. There's no gratification in that at all. And beliefs that I was given by my parents certainly became my beliefs. I mean, I didn't even question it. I just grew up believing what they told me was the truth. And I never believed things for myself. And so the hardest part of my life was, basically my later teens and into my 20s, realizing that I was kind of lost. I was up a creek without a paddle, as they say. I just felt like everything that I believed was forced on me, and I needed to get out and kind of learn for myself, and that became everything that I'm doing now. Especially, if the stars are 25 trillion miles away, you know what? I'll eventually figure it out. In my research, I will find those things out. I don't need somebody telling me those things that can't be proven, that they say they do in labs and that they do with these big telescopes. And then you go try and look at the images that they're seeing, and they're no different than what smaller telescopes are seeing. It's just a zoomed-in image of a light in the sky. And so that's their belief. They can believe, because they want all these things like this spinning ball Earth, they can believe that stars are 25 trillion miles away. I choose not to believe that. And unfortunately, they've set the world up in a way where you're going to get laughed at if you say that. It's just not okay to say because the intellectuals believe it. So, eventually, people will believe because they have no doubts, right? If you have no doubts, then you don't need belief. But if you are believing in things, it's because you have doubt about that. So let's say you have doubts about, evolution. Well, then, you believe in evolution because you don't have a clue about how we got here. So you have to find something. How did we get here? I don't know. I'm going to go with the scientist view that we got here through evolution. So you're basing your beliefs off of your doubts of certain elements of your life. And I think that people in this world suffer from a fear of doubt and a fear of unknowing. And they have been taught that that's the case. And so I adopt a belief system, so they adopt a belief system because it shrouds or pushes away that doubt. So, take a guess why globe believers, many of them at least, are hateful of the very thing that I believe. It's because it calls into question their very closely held belief about something that they probably know they'll never know for a fact, but they've adopted the belief system that science has given them. So I don't believe in a globe because if I did, I'd be using it to mask my doubt. So the globe would be a belief system for me, and I'd adopt it, and I'd say, because I'm doubtful about where I live, I'm going to adopt the globe, and just that's going to be my belief system. Instead, I believe it's flat because until I'm given sufficient evidence to go contrary to my senses and my observations, then I have no doubt. So I don't have doubts about where I live. I used to, and I don't anymore, because I recognize the world as it's presented to me. My senses tell me what the world is. And if it's not that, then I'll easily see sufficient evidence to prove to me that it's something else. It took a while for me to get there because I was raised just like everybody else with that belief in the globe, that it was scientific, that it was factual, that it was full of evidence, that it had mountains of scientific data behind it. When I went and looked for it and couldn't find it, that's when I said, okay, time out. These guys need to prove it to me. It's not the other way around. Just because we were in school and we were 6 years old and they taught us, that's not our fault. I'm not going to take that on my shoulders. That's their fault for teaching me when I was too young to question, when I was too young to basically challenge anything that they told me. So for me, I believe it's flat because no one's ever proven to me otherwise. And I think that that's a safer feeling because it feels safe. I don't have that doubt. You've got water that maintains its level. We know that. Once you see that the government's corrupt, again, I can't speak for Canada much, but certainly in the United States, some of the worst atrocities in the history of the world have come out of my country. It's a sad thing to know. They taught us all nationalistic pride. As we came through the school system, I felt like I was born in the country that was going around and saving the world and was going to help all these third world countries and how great we were. And we were all about peace and democracy. And that's how I was brought up. And so when you find out the truth, and that, for as long back as the government goes, that they've been doing absolute atrocities and killing people under this false idea of anti-terrorism or whatever it might be than that particular day, it's simply masking their crimes by pointing at somebody else's. And for those that are Christians, it's exactly what Jesus talks about when he says, taking the speck out of your own eye before you look at a neighbor's eye. And America's the complete opposite of that. They're just anything that they see, and these people are a tyrant. Well, we'll go in there and we'll take over the whole country, set up new shop, put in people that are friendly with us and our corporate partners. And then you've got more atrocities and more death. A death is a death. To me, you kill somebody, you've done a very bad thing. And so when you find out that your government's responsible for so much of that, it is a sad day. But there's so many things that come with learning about the world that we live in. And when you find out they've lied to you, water going down the opposite direction in an opposite hemisphere, that was taught to me. And you don't need to teach people the truth through lies. So when you find out that was a lie, it's not true, then it should make you ask yourself, why would they teach me that? If the globe is true, it's true. It'll come to be true. I'll see that it's true. But that's not what we get. We get every commercial, every radio ad, it's all about the globe. Global this. Of course, we've always known it's a globe. We've known for 2,000 years. You'll never hear somebody just say the earth is round. They always have to start it out. Of course, we know that the earth is round. We've known for 2,500 years that the earth is round. It's a constant barrage of globe propaganda. And at some point, you need to ask yourself why. If it's so true and so scientific, I ask myself that all the time. Why would they ever teach that way? Did Columbus discover or prove that the earth was round? Again, I was taught that was the case. And then you go through 10, 15 more years, all of a sudden that starts changing. Now that's not the belief. Now it's everybody from 2,000 years ago has always believed that it was round, which makes no sense. Just ask yourself, you've got Aristophanes in 250 BC. He measures the earth and comes up with about 25,000 miles, give or take a few thousand. And then it took till 1492, so we're talking 1,700 years. Think how long that is. 1,700 years until somebody got in a boat and went west, knowing that they knew the circumference of the earth, they knew it's a ball, and yet everybody just stayed in Europe and Spain and I guess said, one day we'll go across the water. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a story told on top of a story, changed, erased, corrected, and some of the things that I want to talk about today with the book 1984 will come up here in a second. So when you start to see all these lies that we're told, you should start to see that there's a problem. Let me ask you this: do boats go over a curve? That's something we were all taught. And if you've gone out there with your own camera and observed it, it doesn't happen. It's not what's happening. You can see the boat either disappearing as it gets smaller, or you can see that convergence layer, and you can see the bottom of the boat start to get eaten up by it. But it's easily explained by things other than there's people upside down underneath us right now, which we all know inside is not the truth. I know there's nobody upside down from me, below me. It's just not happening. Until somebody shows me some sort of evidence or proof, why would I ever believe that? Why would I adopt that as a belief? It's somebody else's belief. It's somebody else's hope or dream or whatever. And the more you research it, you'll see things like this quote from George Ellis. When I saw this, one of the biggest quotes to me, he's talking about the ideas of cosmology, and he says you can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. In my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I want to bring in the open is the fact that we are using a philosophical criteria and choosing our models. A lot of cosmology tries to hide that. Basically, what he's admitting there is that the cosmological system that we have now is based off of philosophical criteria. And that is the idea of the view of a creator versus a Big Bang and no creator. And they've chosen the models that we're given because it gets rid of an idea of a creator. And he says it right here. It says a lot of cosmology tries to hide that. Cosmology is a science. So you've got a science that is trying to hide something from people. And those are the kind of quotes where I see them and I'm like, that's all I need to see. That you've got a mainstream cosmologist here telling us that we're being lied to. And on the other hand, you've got people telling us science is great, it's wonderful, it's got all these peer-reviewed papers, and it's fantastic, they don't lie, it's all backed up by evidence. Well, he's simply saying that we're choosing our models based on philosophical criteria. Another one of those quotes that comes from the same thing is the Edwin Hubble situation, and I don't know how much you really know about that. But when you talk about the universe that we're given and the idea that we're on, I'm sure you've heard it before, we're on a balloon. And if you kind of picture a balloon and you put a bunch of polka dots on it and you blew up the balloon, as the balloon is blowing up, every little dot is technically moving further from another dot. So that's the balloon idea. Well, that's the idea of our universe. The reason why is because the observations tell us that we're the center of the universe. The observations are things moving away from us. There's never galaxies moving towards us. So the observations are we're the center of the universe, but you've got scientific minds who said things, and I'll quote him straight out. But he said, let me see where I have it here. So basically what he said is that, we got here, 1 second. So he basically said that when it comes to observing the universe, that yes, it was a problem for them, that they weren't able to come up with a way. So what did they choose? They said, well, if we come up with spatial curvature. So remember, they're not seeing the curvature of outer space. There's nothing to see. You can't see that outer space curves. But they said, if we say that it curves, then that allows us to project the fact that everywhere looks the same. Basically saying that any other galaxy, any other planet, any other, wherever you are, everybody would see the same thing. So that's what they adopted. And then he says that to get away from the absolute horror of a unique position, and I'll read that exactly here. So, mainstream scientists and cosmologists, and the one responsible for the idea of an expanding universe is Edwin Hubble. I'm sure you've heard of the Hubble Space Telescope. So our observations are more closely resemble the fact that we are at the center. But Hubble said that the distinction of galaxies in all directions leave the observer in a unique position. Such a favored position, of course, is intolerable. Therefore, in order to restore homogeneity and to escape the horror of a unique position, the departure from uniformity, which are introduced by the recession factors, must be compensated for with spatial curvature. There seems to be no other escape. So that quote tells you what scientists are doing. They're not looking at observations and saying unbiasedly, this is what the data shows us. They're taking the data and saying, this shows us that we're the center. But what can we do so that we're not? And that's the absolute horror of a unique position. It's intolerable. And so when you hear that, that's not science talk. That's not how scientists should be talking. You shouldn't be saying that it's the absolute horror of being in a unique position. What's wrong with being the center of the universe? If it's the truth, if it's what observations show us, then I think we should have pushed that. And I also don't disagree with the fact that if you're on a balloon, universe, whatever, and it's getting bigger, and I don't know who's blowing up the balloon, but if that is the case, and observations match that, then both things should be investigated. I'm certainly not saying close the door to everything else and let's just say we're the center of the universe. You have to be open to all possible truths. The problem is they shut one down. They said, we will not be the center of the universe. We refuse. And they built an entire cosmological model off of their hope and dreams. And that's pretty sad. So really, there's no other escape other than the one that clearly is shown by observations, which is we are the center. So what I see science is about is building beliefs. They're not building truth, they're building beliefs. And with observations, they're biased towards their own worldview. I mean, that's obvious. And then you read George Wallace say this quote, And a lot of science is trying to hide something. That didn't make me very happy. You guys, they can keep their beliefs. I don't want somebody else's beliefs. I don't want to know simply what they think is the truth. So I don't even say that I have so many beliefs. I mean, I obviously do have certain things that I can't prove, so I would have to say I believe them. But it's more like I trust. And so I can trust because things are all around me that I can trust everywhere. And, I trust that the sun will rise tomorrow. I'm sure most of you do too. It's not a belief. That's a trust, because you don't need a man to tell you that the sun will rise tomorrow. It's based off of all your experience. So trust for me is everywhere I look. I trust that if I plant a seed in the ground and give it the right amount of sun and water, that it will grow. Don't need a man to tell me those things. I trust this was a creation, not an accident. I trust that I'm not stardust that assembled over billions of years. That I don't need to believe I came from an amoeba. I don't need to believe that the Earth is 4.54 billion years old. That's somebody else's belief. It's not mine. And if you do believe those things, then you have to recognize that you trust men. That your belief is in the thoughts of other men that can't be proven. You have to then believe that the universe has never changed. There's never been a change in the universe at all. Any kind of mass catastrophe that would have changed the amount of carbon in the soil. No, nothing like that could have happened, or else the techniques that we're using to date things would be off. So trust for me, and it may be different than other people, does not come from books. Doesn't come from Torahs. It doesn't come from sermons, because Scripture is nature. That's what God wrote for me. There's no reading required for that. True wisdom to me is true trust in the Creator. That's for me. I trust no man. There's no use. I believe in no man. But I trust I'm here for a reason. I trust that each and every one of you is here for a reason. Nobody is just, it's a gift. Life is a gift. And I believe we'll be judged on how we treat that gift. How do we treat others? I was talking to some people outside last night, and one of the things I said in the past was how easy it could be the kingdom of God here tomorrow. It really could be here tomorrow if we didn't have tyrants at the top oppressing people, taking their unfair share of money. If you just think about, look to the person to your left in this room and really just imagine that you only were responsible for taking care of that person and making sure that they were happy. And then realize that if that was how everybody acted, then the person to your right would be looking at you. And so you'd really have one person to take care of, and the world could be perfect. And unfortunately, that's nowhere near, because we've got people who are making sure you go to work every day. So you've got to take care of you and your family, make sure your children go to school, make sure your wife also has to work, make sure you have to work into your 70s or 80s. So all that is meant to take you away from ever being happy and content, because when that happens, then you realize you don't need a government anymore. You don't need people taking your money and making you register for every thing in the world. These things are not needed. So that's the way I believe, and we're certainly not a aftermath of some exploding galaxy, or that's kind of nonsense that you hear all across mainstream. So what I wanted to say about 1984, and these are some interesting quotes. This is why I recommend that you read the book. This is absolutely what is going on now, and we need to be aware of it. So this is just a conversation going on between O'Brien and Winston. Basically, if you haven't read the book, you'd have to read it to understand. But it's just a conversation between somebody being basically broken down to a mind-controlled nothing and his overseer. So it says, O'Brien silenced him with a movement of his hand and says, "We control matter because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull. You will learn by degrees, Winston. There is nothing that we can't do. Invisibility, levitation, anything. I could float off this floor like a soap bubble if I wished to. I do not wish to because the party does not wish to. You must get rid of those 19th century ideas about the laws of nature. We make the laws of nature." And he says, "But you do not. You aren't even the masters of this planet. What about Eurasia and East Asia? You have not conquered them yet." He says, "Unimportant. We shall conquer them when it suits us." He says, "But the world itself is only a speck of dust, and man is tiny, helpless. How long has he been in existence? For millions of years, the earth was uninhabited." "Nonsense. The earth is as old as we are, no older. How could it be older? Nothing exists except through human consciousness. But the rocks are full of bones of extinct animals, mammoths, mastodons, enormous reptiles, which lived here long before man was ever heard of." He says, "Have you seen those bones, Winston?" "Of course not." Of course not. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgot doublethink? And I missed that part where he says, of course not. 19th century biologists invented them. Before man, there was nothing. After man, if he could come to an end, there would be nothing. Outside man, there is nothing. He says, but the whole universe is outside us. Look at the stars. Some of them are 1,000,000 light years away. They're out of reach forever. He says, what are the stars? Said O'Brien indifferently. They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The Earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go around it. Winston made another convulsive movement. This time he did not say anything. O'Brien continued, though, answering a spoken objection. He said, for certain purposes, of course, that is not true. When we navigate the ocean, or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the Earth goes around the sun, and that the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it's beyond us to produce a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant according to as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten doublethink? So one thing that's interesting about this is we need to recognize that the mathematicians are absolutely capable of writing math equations that can be used in either situation. They can take things that are close and make them far. Maybe people have heard me talk about scaling invariance recently, and I'll talk about that because I do think it's important. So do you know that the universe that we're given, or the model that we're given, is based entirely off of angular sizes? What that means is that we see the sun and the moon, they're a half degree in the sky. But from that, if everything was wiped from our memory tomorrow and we showed up on the Earth, that would not tell us how far away the sun and the moon are. Somebody had to give us those numbers, and now they do match mathematically, and there's a reason for that. It's a mathematical model. But you can change those numbers to basically anything you want as long as you scale it, and there is an invariance, meaning there is no change. So we know that they say that the sun is 867,000 miles in diameter, but it could be 3 million miles in diameter. And if we did that, it would be 330 million miles away. And Earth would still spin 1,000 miles per hour. That's kind of a staple they need because of the day. And then that would put us at 236,000 miles around the sun. And our yearly orbit would be 2.1 billion miles, and the moon would be 5,100 miles in diameter and 565,000 miles away. But nothing would change on Earth. So it's one of the biggest revelations that it's a mathematical system. If they can be other distances and nothing changes, we wouldn't notice it because it's the same angular size. So once you realize that, we're stuck with a mathematical system. We shouldn't be surprised when it works out mathematically. It doesn't mean it's the truth. It means that mathematicians have put together these numbers. They can regurgitate them quite well. They can put them in books and have Neil deGrasse learn them and become an astrophysicist. It doesn't mean that it's true. So I think that people need to recognize that's called scaling invariance if you want to look that up.
I was taught that the sun is 93 million miles away. How about you? What were you taught? My guess is the same. Were you taught how we know it? Well, possibly your answer would be trigonometry. A hero of ball earth believers everywhere states this is the way that we know. You can verify the distance of the sun.
Correct.
Based off what?
Trigonometry.
So using trigonometry, we can then figure out the distance to the sun. But the sun and the moon appear to be the same size in the sky. So if we use trigonometry, then I guess the moon is also 93 million miles away? Is that what you were taught? Me neither. So I'm confused. I thought that math could be used to give us these facts. Does math tell us what reality is? Because the same religious zealot hero has also repeatedly cried,
Math is reality.
Were you taught this? Well, if it is reality, then the sun is 93 million miles and can't be, say, 229 million miles. Both can't be true, right? Both are certainly not reality. So obviously, if
math is reality,
then math must be able to tell us which is right, 93 million or 229 million. Well, then it's time to prove our reality. Let's see what the math says. Thanks for joining me. This is Jeranism.
Guidance is internal.
Ignition sequence start.
3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake. 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 Because it looks so fake.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jeran from Jeranism, back with another video for you today. How true is the model of the solar system that we have? Well, ask any astronomer or fanboy of NASA or liar like Deceive McCrae, and you'll get told it is 100% fact. It is as true can be. Well, I shall disprove this at once and show how a presupposition, dogmatic faith can make their religious beliefs seem true when they are anything but that. So, we've been told that the sun is 93 million miles away. How do we know this? Well, let's begin with some facts. What do we know about the sun? Well, it emits light. What else? Well, the rest is a lot like the idea of Santa delivering gifts to every child on Christmas Eve. Even little children think it sounds crazy, but because authority figures are the ones telling them the story, and they don't know any better, and, well, cookies are eaten in the morning, it becomes believable to most children. So much the same, the ideas of the distance to the sun come with the same nuggets. You and I might not know any better, so we look to the authorities for the truth. So we are told that it's 93 million miles, and with that comes some eaten cookies in the morning. They have filled our knowledge gap with their own cleverly constructed explanations of what we see, and then all we can see is what looks like beautifully wrapped presents, and then we find some cookie crumbs as evidence of their fictional Santa Claus. One way they do this is with the idea of angular size. So, back to our facts. The sun emits light. Anything else that we know about the sun? Sure, we know its angular size or its apparent diameter. This is the apparent size or angular diameter of a sky item. How large something appears in our eye or telescope. The sun and moon both appear to be about 31 or 32 arc minutes, or that's equal to 1/2 degree. So I want to point out something that I certainly wasn't taught in school, and it's no wonder why. Scaling invariance. Feel free to look it up on Wikipedia, and you'll see that in physics, mathematics, statistics, and economics, scale invariance is a feature of objects or laws that do not change if scales of length, energy, or other variables are multiplied by a common factor. As long as all of your inputs are scaled correctly, the entire body is indifferent. It doesn't vary. One of those things, the entire solar system model. But wait, the mathematics of the solar system is facts. Indisputable fact, right? Well, not when the entire models are based off of angular size, because angular size tells us what size something is in our eye, not its true distance or its true size. We need more info. So hold up here. I thought...
Math is reality.
It has to be. 2 + 2 = 4. That's reality. 30 + 15 = 45. Period. Well, is that true? A man has 30 cars, and he added 15 cars. He now has 45 cars. Is this true? Well, if there was such a man, and he did add said cars to his 30-car collection, then the statement is true. Is it reality? Well, I'd have to first prove said man exists, as do his 30 cars, as do the 15 he added. That makes it reality. So is math reality? Well, only when all elements of the equation are proven true is math reality. Is 30 + 15 45? Yes, true. Or is it? What if it was 30 + 15 half cars? Oh, that's different. We need to prove and know what each number refers to. If I have $3 million and I add $1 million, does that mean I have $4 million? Well, if I had $3 million in reality and added $1 million in reality, then I'd have $4 million. But to claim it is reality, I must first prove that I have what I claim. So if the entire model of the solar system is based off of angular size, who has proven the actual distance and sizes of said items? Is the solar system reality, or is it a cartoon? I mean, is the solar system a fact, or is it fiction? This clearly has to be solved already, correct? What if I told you it wasn't? What if it was all just numbers? What if it was all just math, and they wanted you to believe that math was reality, but they forgot about the other part? They have to prove all the elements of the math. Let me explain. So the angular size of the sun and moon is approximately 31 or 32 arc minutes, which equals 0.53 degrees. Now, that does work for a sun 93 million miles away and 864,337 miles wide. But it also works for a sun 229 million miles away and 2 million miles wide. Wait, what are you saying? The sun would look way bigger in the sky. No, it wouldn't. It would look the same as if it was 93 million, or if it was 46,701,000 miles away and 432,000 miles wide. The distances and sizes can be scaled indifferently. Our observations from Earth would be identical. If the sun was 23,351,000 miles away and 216,000 miles wide, it would be the same as if it were 11,675,000 miles away and 108,000 miles wide, identical to the sun that's 6,053,900 miles distant and 56,000 miles in diameter, which is no different than a sun 3,026,900 miles away and 28,000 miles wide, which is just the same as a sun 1.5 million miles away and 14,000 miles wide. Okay, hold up. What about our orbit around the sun? Well, sure. You know the distance, which is the radius of our orbit. 2 pi r gives us 9,504,780 miles as our yearly orbit. Divide that by 365 and that by 24, and you get 1,085 miles per hour as our new speed instead of 66,000 miles per hour. And our observations change none. And since you feel no spin or travel at all, well, then nothing changes at all. Man, math is so reality. Whether the sun is 756,730 miles away and 7,000 miles wide, or even, heaven forbid, 3,500 miles away and 32 miles in diameter. It makes no difference. You liar. What about eclipses? Well, as I said earlier, we can't just change the sun. We have to scale the moon too. So yes, as long as you divide or multiply by the same number, you'll be fine. So yes, the moon is 0.53 degrees as well, which works out to being 233,400 miles away and 2,159 miles in diameter, as it is about 400 times as small and 400 times as close as the sun. But it would work the same if the sun was 100 times as big and 100 times as far, so that the moon was actually 58,376 miles away and 540 miles wide. Well, then an eclipse would happen because the sun is 100 times as far, so 6,053,900 miles away and 56,000 miles wide. Or the moon could be 14,594 miles away and 135 miles wide, or 864 miles away and 8 miles wide, or even, heaven forbid, 3,567 miles away and 33 miles wide. It could be half that size, 1,729 miles away and 16 miles wide, and then the sun could be double at 3,567 miles and 32 miles wide. Same observation from Earth, of course, because math is reality. Now, some things could help us determine which distance was more likely to be correct. For example, the inverse square law of light that says that given a certain brightness or intensity, it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. So if we know how bright the moon is, each time we half our distance, the brightness increases by 4 times. So you see, we can say the moon is 100 lumens, and it doesn't really matter which number we place on there, as the result will be the same. So at 240,000 miles, we have 100 lumens. At 120,000 miles, we have 400 lumens. At 60,000, we have 1,600 lumens. At 30,000, we have 6,400 lumens, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth, till we get down to 1,000 miles distance. When we're 1,000 miles away from the moon, the lumens should be 6,553,000. So if we divide that by the original 100, we see that from 1,000 miles away, the moon would be 65,530 times brighter than it is from Earth. Is that what we saw? Well, here's some photos from Apollo 17 from 800 miles from the moon. And you tell me, is that moon 65,530 times as bright as it is from Earth? Of course not. So, one thing or the other isn't true. Either we've never been to the moon, or the moon is far closer. What can't be true is the moon is the distance that they tell us, and that man has been there. Another way that we can determine if the distances we are given are correct is to imagine the sun, I don't know, say it's 1,000 miles away. The sun would take up the entire day sky, correct? Okay, so let's make it now 93 million miles away. Okay, now if you hold a dime out at arm's length, that's about the size of the sun, at 93 million miles or 8 light minutes. So now double that distance. Well, that's now a light 16 minutes. Okay, double it again. Well, now we're at a light half hour. Okay, double that again, and we're now at a light hour, and I doubt you'd be able to see the sun. But let's multiply that by 24, and now, finally, we're at a light day. No chance you would see the sun. But now we still have to multiply that by 365 times more to get to a light year. Think about that, people. How would we see any star, considering no star is that close? Nonsense, mathematical reality. I mean, really, to think that we could see 25 trillion miles, remember that a trillion seconds is 31,000 years. Think about that and realize that the closest star, other than the sun, is 25 trillion miles. Yole. Now, wait a minute, you yell. Wouldn't the planets have to change as well? Well, of course. Their orbits, sizes, and distance would all be scaled appropriately. Here's an easy way to see it in action. Take these numbers 0, 3, 6, and start doubling. 12, 24, 56, 108. Okay, now add 4 to each. So 0 becomes 4, 3 becomes 7, 6 becomes 10, 12 becomes 16, 24 becomes 28, 56 becomes 60, and 108 becomes 112. Now divide by 10. So 4 becomes 0.4, 7 becomes 0.7, 10 becomes 1.0, 16 becomes 1.6, 28 becomes 2.8, 60 becomes 6.0, and 111 or 112 becomes 11.2. Now, does that look familiar? Well, it should. 0.4 is Mercury's AU, 0.7 is Venus, 1.0 is Earth, 1.6 is Mars, 2.8 is Ceres, 6.0 is Jupiter, and 11.2 is Saturn. Now, of course, those are approximate numbers as they change based on their distance from the sun, which is changing all the time. So now you have the distances from the sun, 93 million miles times the AU. So Mercury is 37.2 million, Venus is 65.1 million, Earth is 93 million, Mars is 148.8 million, Jupiter is 558 million, and Saturn's about 1 billion. Of course, you can then figure out exactly what their distance from Earth is, with Mercury being 56 million, Venus being 26 million, Mars being 34 million, and Jupiter being 367 million miles from Earth. But what if 1 AU is actually 3,567 miles, not 93 million? Well, 3,567 is to 93 million as 1 is to 26,072. So scale it all by 1 26,072nd, or I'm not really sure. Then you can even figure out the distance from the Earth. So Mercury is 2,147 miles, Venus is 997, Mars is 1,304, all miles from Earth. Now wait, wouldn't they need to be smaller? And, well, of course, scaling invariance. So Mercury is actually 2,147 miles away, and with its angular size, it would come out to 0.11 miles, so that would be 603 feet in diameter. And Venus at 997 miles from Earth would have a 0.28 mile diameter, or 1,520 feet. And Jupiter would be 14,076 miles away and 3.40 miles wide. And we can check our work as well, because 3.4 miles is 1/10 of the Sun size at 33 miles in diameter, which matches the current model, with Jupiter 84,000 miles wide and the Sun 860,000 miles wide. No, you cry. Give me my Santa back. Wouldn't gravity be different? Well, would it? Well, here's the thing. Whatever amount of gravity has been given to the Earth or the Sun or any of the other planets is based off mass. Well, we can easily just change the mass of the Sun. Who is weighing it? The answer is no one. And we can change the mass of the Earth. Who is weighing it? Cavendish? In his shed? Give me a break. And quit it with your religious stories. It's becoming silly. But clearly, the silliest thing ever said is...
Math is reality.
Which is the biggest load of bull ever stated as fact. I mean, really. If you ever hear that clown trying to assert that again, tell him you don't care about his religious presuppositional beliefs, and then tell him that you'll listen when he has some sort of proof or scientific evidence for any of the mathematical figures that his holy priests have taught him to calculate. I'm very proud that some of you have become quite proficient at your religious dogma. I, however, am interested in the truth. And all of you ballers have proven again and again that you have no interest in the truth at all. What you need to realize is that fighting against it is futile. Your scientific evidence for your religious beliefs is nil. What you think you have is nothing more than crumbs from Santa that you continue to try and force on us as meaning Santa exists. I know it sucks to find out that your parents are actually the ones who ate the cookies and left the crumbs for you to find. Well, your physics books have been written with every detail about every single crumb, and they can be calculated and divided, multiplied and manipulated, chapter after chapter, lecture after lecture. But if you just use your own brain instead of theirs, you will see that there is no Santa and there is no 93 million mile distant sun. It's all just math, and math is not reality. No matter how many times or how many curse words that Red puts around it, it isn't reality. Do you get it yet, Red? And until you can come and bring something other than your religious dogma and pathetic attempts to recruit us as fellow parishioners, until you can actually provide evidence, not just some math that proves only that your model is one of a near infinite amount of possibilities with no evidence other than, but my holy book. Until you have more, and until you can prove that math is reality, then in your own words,
I recommend that you shut the up.
So we need to get out and we need to experiment. I can't believe my time's up. Is that 0? Oh, goodness. I'll kind of sum it up real quick. We need to get out and we need to be, and maybe I'm talking about myself, but we need to get out and we need to get into as many people's heads that want to hear it. And I think that sometimes I'm stuck. I know myself. I'm trying to convince people that probably never want to be convinced. They wouldn't be convinced if it was proven to them. They just don't care. So for me, it's got to be about speaking to you guys, the ones that hear it, that recognize the problems, that recognize this doublethink that they speak, and it's the way that they've changed everything. They've changed it by completely changing history. At any point, they can change history, and then they just teach it going forward as if that's the only history that can be true. And you can't trust books. I mean, that's another thing I wanted to get into a little bit. Once you go back a certain date and really look into books, really look into what can be trusted, because everything was written in 1600. It really, I've been doing a lot of research on that. You're not going to find a book that you can really prove was written before that. And what a time with the invention of the printing press to get lies into people's minds. And it would have been amazing for them as these overlords. They're basically going to see, here's all these people. They've never read a book before, because at the time, the only thing you were allowed to read was Scripture. They were going to start to be able to read books. They were going to be thirsty for knowledge. What better time to indoctrinate a world than to create a whole storyline of history and the past and the year 0 and before that and BC. I doubt a lot of that is anywhere near true. I think we're on a much shorter time scale. I think we've been here a much shorter amount of time. But I think that there's been technology here this whole time. So, there's so many things. If you want to check out, Jeranism Raws on Monday nights on TFR, I try and always talk about as much of this stuff as I can. That as I research, I try and get it out there, because I love to hear back from people who have different research. So actually, I was looking into that, Jeran, and I saw this. That's how I get my beliefs, more in line with reality. And so I hope that people want to join me in that. So lastly, if we allow people to be our overlords or our reality teachers, then we're never going to live this life as we were intended. And I'm afraid of that. I think that that's kind of what is happening to everyone. This real quick was just this Aurora space station. Basically came out the other day and said that for $80,000 you can book a hotel room on this spacecraft that'll be in orbit. Of course, not in orbit now, as you might expect. But I thought it was $80,000. I was like, $80,000, that's kind of cheap. Until you go and click the sign up button, and it says that's a down payment on your $9.5 million payment. Nope. Wasn't going to go with the $80,000 anyway. So now here's the thing. Imagine how easy this is. You know how interest works at a bank, right? So if I say, hey, everybody, I'm going to do something crazy in 10 years. Give me $80,000 now, and you can cancel whenever you want. Doesn't matter to me. And I go put that in the bank. You need 10 people, and you have $1 million earning interest. You're making $50,000, $60,000 in interest like that. So these are just scams. They've been here for hundreds of years. They'll continue to be here. Just recognize them. Call them out when you see them. Show people this is a scam. They want somebody. They just give me the $80,000 so that, like Richard Branson, how much money is he making? $250,000 a head. to buy a pass on the Virgin Galactic. He's got 800 people or something that have paid. I doubt that anyway. But think of how much money he's making. $250,000 a person paid in the bank. I forgot what the total is, something like $200 million or something. I mean, he could be living basically off that interest and be, rich as he is, flying his personal jets around, and just nonsense that these things are getting away with because of the fact that we were all taught these lies about space. That we were all taught about this Earth is not good for us. We need to go to Mars. We need to go, colonize some other place. It's just nonsense. Like you would ever want to go to Mars. I don't even know what the hell that's about. We just need to recognize scams. I mean, that's the problem. I don't think we recognize scams anymore. I don't know how your guys' media is. Our media in the States is terrible. It's just absolutely, it's miserable. I had a couple little clips, but just clips about media fakery. Have you seen the one with the CNN people in the same parking lot? You guys seen that one? It's pretty funny. There's a clip of Nancy Grace and I can't think of the other girl's name. Let me skip through some of these slides. But it's funny. Just they're in the same parking lot with the same cars behind them.
And with all the false urgency.
So you'll see them. They're having this conversation as if they're in different parts of the country. Now look behind them, and you'll see that there's the same vehicles. So there goes the red car there, and then you'll see there goes the little van with the bus, and then here comes the van with the bus, turns on this. So she's basically standing next to that other cone in the same parking lot. There goes the little bus with the pink stripe, then the bus with the pink stripe. So it's just nonsense. I mean, this is the kind of media nonsense that we're shown, and it's just crap. The last one, I'll let this play, and I'll be done. This is the kind of research that we get on the news. You guys see this one? This is the San Francisco plane crash. And they actually announced here. Now back out here live. They're going to actually say that the NTSB, or the safety board, has confirmed the names of these pilots. And this is the names of the pilots that crashed the Asiana flight. Here we go.
Live here at SFO, Claudine Wong, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
All right, thank you, Claudine. We have new information out this noontime concerning one of the teenagers who died in that crash landing. San Francisco police are now confirming 16-year-old Ye Mong Yuan was hit by a fire truck. Police say she was on the ground and covered in the foam crews had sprayed to douse the fire aboard the plane. Coroner is still trying to determine the cause of death and whether she was already dead when the truck hit her. We have new information now also on the plane crash. KTVU has just learned the names of the 4 pilots who were on board the flight. They are Captain Sum Ting Wong, Wee Tu Lo, Ho Lee Fook, and Bang Ding Ao. And the NTSB has confirmed these are the names of the pilots.
That's real news.
214 winning.
That is real news and ridiculous. And they even said the NTSB confirmed the names of the pilots. So, I mean, they're just completely lying to you. I don't know whoever called that hoax in. It's pretty funny. But anyway, guys, it's been fun. Thanks for all. And if you haven't seen this video, too, this proves right here that there's the media is all working together.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and treatment of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push.
So, moral of the story, turn off the TV and don't watch the news anymore. Thanks, guys. I guess probably lunch or, oh no, here comes Rick.
I'm so glad something didn't go wrong there. And the media keeps on going. How do they do it? Ask yourself that question before we break for lunch. How do they do it? How does the media keep doing this? What's that? You keep watching. You keep watching. You keep buying the products that advertise during their newscasts. And the people at the top that own the corporations that make the products that we buy are probably playing golf and doing whatever they do with the folks that own the networks. Quite possibly so, yeah. It's like this. I was just asked out in the lobby a little bit ago, well, why do you give any credibility to this Bible? You know, it's written by men. And I know the argument is, well, why do you give any credibility to these science books that are written by men? Do your research. Have you checked the Bible? Have you? Have you really thoroughly investigated as a journalist what it says? It's not a faith issue. It's not faith. It's truth if you read it and research it. It becomes truth, not just an act of faith. It really does. So, on that note, let's grab some grub before something goes wrong. Something go wrong. And make sure you get back up here to the third floor so that we aren't too low. All right? We'll be back right after lunch.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it on your favorite social media sites. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned and we'll see you back next time.